On Monday, Poland introduced border controls with Germany and Lithuania after groups of Poles organised what they called citizen patrols along the Polish-German border to oppose migrants being sent back to Poland from Germany after crossing the border illegally. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk has told Germany that Poland's patient stance was wearing thin, and that if Germany extends its border controls again in September, Poland will have no choice but to do the same. So in this video, we'll explain the Poland-Germany migration dispute, the other reasons tensions are rising, and whether things could improve. Explore which world leaders are winning and which are losing every week with our new podcast, the World Leader Leaderboard. Find it over on the TLDR Podcast's YouTube channel or in your favourite podcast app. Let's start with some context on Polish-German relations. When Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk was first in office between 2007 and 2014, he sought closer relations with Germany's then-Chancellor Angela Merkel, marked by pragmatic attempts to address long-standing disputes over World War II reparations and their strong support for EU integration. Tusk even declared in an interview once that he was incapable of getting angry with Angela Merkel. However, relations collapsed under the next Polish government, led by the nationalist right-wing Law and Justice Party. From 2015 to 2023, the PIS frequently used harsh anti-German rhetoric and criticised Germany's central role in the EU, with its leader Jarosław Kaczynski claiming in 2021 that the EU risked becoming a fourth German Reich, and in 2023 claimed that a German plan would lead to the, quote, annihilation of the Polish state. So when Tusk was re-elected in 2023, there were hopes for an improvement, thanks to Tusk's liberal pro-EU reforms, but the Poland-Germany relationship still faced challenges, notably over the destruction of the Nord Stream 2 gas pipelines, and Germany's resistance to increasing military support for Ukraine under its previous Chancellor Olaf Scholz. Tusk had also pushed to revive the Weimar Triangle, an alliance of France, Germany and Poland, as he was always sceptical of the so-called Franco-German engine, having said back in 2012, things cannot be left to only two capitals of Europe. But now, fractures are starting to show again, with the biggest issue being an argument over migration. Between January 2024 and February 2025, according to data from Poland's federal police, Germany returned more than 11,000 migrants to Poland that it found to have crossed the German-Polish border illegally. There are three main ways that Germany is able to send migrants back to Poland, which we're showing on screen now. While Germany is required to inform Poland of migrant returns under the first two procedures, it's not when using temporary border controls. Since 2023, Germany has had border controls with Poland and Czechia and extended these to all its borders last year. This method is also controversial because of its one-sidedness. Under EU law, countries may introduce their own internal border controls in the event of a serious threat to public policy or internal security, provided that it's a last resort measure in exceptional situations. But when one country introduces border controls, there's often a knock-on effect. This is what we've been seeing over the past couple of years, with a total of 12 EU countries now using temporary border controls. This has heightened concerns about border security in Poland. At the start of July, videos emerged of hundreds of Poles gathering on the Polish side of the border, aimed at opposing the return of migrants sent back to Poland by Germany. The patrols were supported by Poland's two main opposition parties, the far-right Confederation and Law and Justice, which accused Tusk's government of failing to stand up to Germany. The PIS's deputy leader posted on X claiming that Poland's western border is ceasing to exist, while the far-right Confederation leader said at a press conference that Polish border guard officers were, quote, being treated like a free taxi service for illegal immigrants. Tusk initially tried to ignore the issue, condemning the marches and arguing that far-right politicians are making a spectacle at the border. However, days later, Tusk changed his mind, announcing that Poland would introduce border checks with Germany and Lithuania, which came into effect this week. His rhetoric towards Germany has also hardened. In a cabinet meeting this week, Tusk said that he'd spoken several times with Merz, warning him that Poland's patient stance was wearing thin, and saying that if Germany extends its one-sided border controls again in September, Poland will have no choice but to do the same. But aside from the migration dispute, there's at least two other reasons that Poland-Germany tensions are rising. One is that Merz and Tusk have different ideas about how to handle the EU's relationship with the US. After Trump's inauguration in January, Merz argued that Europe can no longer rely on the US, claiming the Trump administration does not care much about the fate of Europe. By contrast, Tusk believes that the US remains an indispensable ally to the EU and has stressed the need for EU leaders to retain good relations with Trump, telling reporters in February there is no reason for allies arguing among themselves not to find a common language on the most important issues. Tusk also appeared to take an indirect swipe at Merz here, warning against all possible voices that would like to introduce some kind of competitive game between the European Union and the United States. Merz and Tusk's disagreement is also reflected by their respective electorates. A Pew Research Center survey from June found that while a majority, 55%, of Poles have a favourable opinion of the US, only a third of Germans do. This is likely down to the US's close relationship with Poland during and after the Cold War, when it advocated for NATO's expansion in Central and Eastern Europe to support countries like Poland through their democratic transition. Our final point is that the ongoing reset in French-German relations may inadvertently strain Germany's relationship with Poland. For a period of time last year, it looked like the Weimar Triangle we mentioned earlier could become a new driving force inside the EU, but it now appears that Germany and France want to continue only as a duo. When Merz visited Poland on his first day as Chancellor, Tusk announced a new beginning in Polish-German relations, but also said that he was convinced the future of Europe really depends to a large extent on how this Weimar Triangle will work. So far, though, it looks like Poland has kind of been cut out of the Weimar Triangle, with Merz and Macron wanting to take the lead on Europe's defence. That said, there are still some reasons to be optimistic about Germany-Poland relations. Merz is enthusiastic about providing military aid to Ukraine and investing in Europe's defence industry, which will reassure Poland given its geographical proximity to Ukraine. In March, Tusk announced a plan to give military training to every adult male in Poland, and Merz is also considering reintroducing conscription, putting Germany on a similar path to Poland. Ultimately, it's possible that this migration blip is just a wobble, and that Poland and Germany will improve their cooperation on defence and investment more broadly. However, the bigger issue might well be Poland's exclusion from centralised French-German decision-making, something that Tusk has long cautioned against. This is a complex and nuanced story though, and as such there's plenty more to read about it online, with 175 sources reporting on it. The issue is, how can you be sure that what you're reading isn't totally biased? Well, that's a problem we face when writing these videos too, and luckily that's where this week's sponsor, Ground News, comes in. For this story in particular, they've identified that there are at least 26 left-leaning sources and 24 right-leaning sources reporting on it. In fact, in addition to this, they've also shown the main differences in headlines among left-leaning and right-leaning outlets, with left-leaning outlets framing it as a defensive move against migration pressures, and right-leaning outlets focusing on the deployment of military troops at borders. We're able to do that because of Ground News, whose incredible website and app lets you discover the news and pulls back the curtain on media bias. That's because every story comes with a quick visual breakdown of the political bias, factuality, and ownership of the source's reporting, all backed by ratings from 3 independent news monitoring organisations. But one of the best parts of their app is their blind spot feed. It presents you with stories and articles that haven't been reported on by one side of the aisle or the other, helping you better break out of your media bubble and discover what those on the other side of the political spectrum are really saying. For instance, if you lean right, you might have missed this story about the Pope conducting the first Green Mass, because only 14% of the reporting comes from outlets leaning right. However, if you regularly check out the blind spot feed, you get shown what you're missing, helping you to keep on top of what the entire political spectrum is thinking about and why. If you're interested in everything that Ground News has to offer, you can get 40% off the Unlimited Access Vantage plan using the link in the description, or by scanning the QR code. This offer is only available here, so make sure you go to ground.news/TLDR or click the link in the description to get started and support an independent news platform working to make the media landscape more transparent.